Hey guys, and welcome to Wildcat World. I'm so excited to be on the show. So this is what happened this week. I am so excited that Disney Plus just released their new Hawkeye miniseries for Christmas. It's kind of holiday themed. I've been wanting to see it, haven't had a chance to see it yet, but I made these guys, the Wildcat Legends cast and crew, check it out and watch it. And I kind of wanted to do a spoiler review, kind of jump into it a little bit, learn more about it myself, because I'm excited to see it probably this weekend. So there will be a lot of spoilers going on in this episode. Spoilers, 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 spoilers.
Spoilers.
Yes. With that being said, Carson, you saw it yesterday.
I did.
What was Hawkeye like?
Well, I had to go into this with quite an open mind because I've told you before, he's my least favorite Avenger.
Okay.
He's my least favorite. But seeing them
So is it just like the way he looks, or is it just like you don't like his character? Like, what is it about him that you don't like? It's Jeremy Renner, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
I think that's the name of the guy. So what's about his face that you're just like, nah?
It's not about his face. I think it's just about the hero itself. Because, I mean, you have this elite group of superheroes, and it's not even that it had to be super, because you have Natasha Romanoff, Black Widow, and she doesn't have superpowers. She's just good.
Oh, yeah,
and then you have the likes of Iron Man and Thor and now Spider-Man, and you have all these mighty heroes, and you just have...
Well, like, okay, so for me, this is like the one thing for me, okay? So this is really important. Between Hawkeye and Green Arrow, I love Oliver Queen so much more. Like, he is, as a character, especially during, like, the comic book series. I'm a huge comic nerd. During, like, the late 60s, early 70s, all, like, the difficulties he had in his personal life, like, kind of the journey through addiction and getting out addiction and what it meant to be completely broken as a hero and then working his way back up to the Justice League was just such a powerful series for him and his, his sidekick, Speedy, right? Whereas with Hawkeye, he just seems to be just really good at so much. He kind of has that Mary Sue kind of quality to him, to where he's just naturally gifted in everything. And doesn't mean he doesn't train and he's hardworking, but he just doesn't have like the gravitas as a character.
It's just not an interesting character for me.
Yeah, for sure. Like I do like the whole like him and Romanoff back and forth and how they first.
A lot of things that sprout from Hawkeye, I respect. Like the family aspect is great storyline, makes for good arcs. When the snap happened, like it was heart-wrenching because you still leveled with them. And just like the relationship that he builds with other Avengers whenever he showed back up and Natasha wasn't there.
Yeah, and that moment, and I've seen trailers for this, and I know in the trailers they even tease like there's like a Broadway show of the Avengers in it.
No,
did it happen?
It was so cool. Yeah, okay. So first episode comes in, it's going great, swimmingly, and then around in like after the first scene, you see Clint Barton, Hawkeye, retired, sitting with his family at this Broadway musical of the attack on New York in Avengers 1.
So cool.
Yep, and so they're going around and they're like singing, they need to save the day, and he's kind of sitting there with a bitter, sour taste in his mouth because like there's a lot of PTSD because this takes place after everything. This is the most recent storyline that we have right now. And so obviously like he lost Natasha and he's seeing someone be campy and going around singing on stage as Natasha, and it kind of like it feels insensitive. And so you see him there with that bitter taste in his mouth, but when people see him at this musical, they're like, oh, musical, oh, Avengers, and they're looking, that's Hawkeye, and he's in this really like this very vulnerable state, and you have people, he had someone come up to him in the bathroom while he was at the urinal right next to him. They didn't even skip a urinal. Don't get me started. And he's like, hey, my kid would really love it if you took a picture with him.
Just like super awkward.
Yeah, so he he doesn't get a break, and he just like he needs time to kind of like decompress, but he really can't. And so it's really interesting to see him in retirement still like having superhero struggles.
One thing that I was kind of interested in is like comic book side, and I know comic books are way different than Disney Plus, is like in the comics, especially when Kate Bishop, which is like the new Hawkeye moving up, in the comics when this happened, they thought that Hawkeye, Clint Barton, was dead. They couldn't find him. He went missing. And so she was naturally great in martial arts. And she was actually, interesting about Kate Bishop, before we kind of go a segue into her character, she was really good at like sword fighting. She's good with staves. She's good with like all sorts of martial arts skills. And then she learned the bow and became a master, a bow and arrow person, right? She kind of like worked her way up through the martial arts, right?
Yeah.
And so she, in the comics, started off in like the Young Avengers. And she started to get her name that way because Clint was dead at that point in the comics. And then she actually worked her way through like a series of years to the Avengers. And I don't know if you guys know this, Captain America was the one that brought her onto the Avengers proper. And so she became an Avenger in the comic books because of Captain America and his like good word, right? Which Captain America is like 110 now or whatever in the comics. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there because now it's all mixed up, right? Because Clint's alive, he's just retired. So in this, how did Kate Bishop just like pop up? Like there's no Young Avengers right now.
So it doesn't seem like it was something that was done purposefully on her part. It's not like she chose the mantle to take up. And it's not like there's really any shoes to fill because in their eyes, there's no big threat. There's not a huge alien floating through the sky of New York right now. And so they're kind of just going through life, but she finds herself in trouble. Let me just start with the first scene.
Yeah.
It starts off as like a prequel to this series, and it's Kate Bishop and her family, her mother and her father. They're playing board games, they're playing checkers, and then her mother and father leave the room.
Okay.
And then she can't find them after a while, and then she looks out this window, and you see that huge alien going across the New York skyline.
Oh, like the Chitauri
Yeah,
or whatever?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
And so she's freaking out, this huge attack on New York, and they're in this big mansion that's very central, and then boom, you have walls collapsing, you have the roof caving in, you have stuff breaking, and everything's in shambles. And then you have her mom, she comes in, she sweeps her up and saves her daughter. But where's her father?
So her mom is still alive.
Yes.
Oh, that's so crazy. So in the comics, it's different. Her mom ends up getting murdered when she's a teenager. And her father is a criminal crime boss that she actually goes against every once in a while.
Her father.
So, yeah. So in this series, I'm very interested to see.
But I think...
It'd be cool if they switched it. What if the mom happens to be like a crime boss or something and the dad dies?
Oh my gosh, now that you're saying this, different puzzle pieces are clicking for me.
Yeah.
So, her mom survived, her dad died.
Okay, so it's reverse.
Flash forward,
Uh-huh.
her mom is starting to see this guy, but we kind of learn that this guy's kind of like a high-class, high-society crook.
That's where that kind of comes in.
Yes, I'm starting to see that make full circle now.
I want to see this so much right now. Okay.
But whenever she loses her father, she looks to her mom at the cemetery, and she's like, I'm sorry that I couldn't protect him. But she's like 6 or 10.
Yeah.
And her mom's like, that's not your job, sweetie. And the next thing she says is, I need a bow.
Okay. There we
she
go.
just makes that decision.
Just straight. So it's not like martial arts, sword fighting, bow staff. It's like the first thing I want is like
the way
bow
that's
and arrow.
like reflected here is like it's not like leading up to bow and arrow. She kind of just jumps into anything she can get her hands on. And so like you said, bow staff, she was fencing with someone, she did martial arts, and she has a bunch of accolades, a whole trophy case that gets full by the time she's grown.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so it shows that progression. That's so cool.
Yeah, and so you can tell that she's highly talented, but at the same time, she's a little troubled because she lost her father. She is very wealthy, and so she can kind of get away with.
Which in the comic books, she has a very wealthy background as well, which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
So.
and so she's kind of mischievous and gets herself into trouble, like I said. And her mother invites her to this dinner, and she introduces her to this guy that she's been seeing.
Okay.
And so she's like kind of thrown off because this guy came out of nowhere, like nothing was stated. And they go, and the mother and this new guy kind of separate for a second. So she's eating at this table, and meanwhile he goes like to an underground, high class, high society.
Okay. Like crime
auction.
pit. Oh, auction. Okay.
It's
cool.
an auction because like they're all there like selling illegal items. Like, yes, this would look really good on my front mantle.
Okay.
And they made sure this is for home use only. And if anyone asks where you got it, you don't know.
You have no idea.
You have no idea how you got
found it on the
this.
street. No problem. Don't ask questions.
And so they start bidding off these things, and Kate actually starts snooping around and she goes underneath, and she's kind of seeing all this happen, and it's really funny, the storyline there, because she figures out the boss's name is Gary. And so when someone looks at her and they're like, "What are you doing down here?" She's like, "Oh, Gary sent me."
Gary sent me.
And they're like, "Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. That's fine.
Thank you."
Mm-hmm.
And then finally this guy comes up to her and he's like, "What are you doing down here?"
Yeah.
"Gary sent me." He looks at her. "I'm Gary." She's like, she has to think of the story up quick. And so she goes, "And you see, that's the problem. You don't even know who I am." And he's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And then she's like, "I'm out of here." And she like flees, and he feels terrible, and he's trying to find her to apologize.
Like, what's going on?
But she like just totally fooled this crime boss named Gary.
That's amazing.
It was awesome.
That's cool.
And so the auction continues, and they actually start auctioning off the sword of Ronin. And so
every time I think of that, I just think of like the cool,
yeah,
like,
the little
wiping off, like just
with his
yeah.
weird haircut.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yes.
I don't know what Marvel was thinking with that one. But
If I had
anyways,
hair, I would totally do it. Just saying.
whatever floats your boat.
Whatever floats your boat, man.
And so they start selling the Sword of Ronin, which Hawkeye donned the persona Ronin after the snap, and he went kind of vigilante mode. And so he had this sword, he had this whole suit and cloak thing, and so they auction off the sword, which is retractable and it looks really cool.
That's so cool.
It was like over 450 million.
Okay.
And then they're like, and to match the set, the suit, and it's like in this box.
So
and
cool.
so they start auctioning that off, and it's going, then boom, this wall gets busted in by an explosion, and these criminals with ski masks and sweatshirts on, they bust in, and then they're trying to like steal and like get as much money as they can because it's a high class mob ordeal, so they can't report it to the police because
there's nothing. Yeah.
but you can get a lot of money at the same time. And so Kate finds herself in this scenario where she wants to help, but she doesn't want her face shown.
Does she?
Yeah.
Does she? Oh, she grabs the suit.
She does. She goes to
okay.
the suit, she grabs it, and she's going around, she's fighting, and it's really funny because in this scene there's a really durable wine bottle.
Okay.
I was watching it and I was like, dang, how many hits can this thing take? Because she grabs it to defend herself because she doesn't have the sword. And she has this wine bottle, and she's going around like crook to crook, just thunk,
Dunk,
thunk,
dunk,
thunk.
dunk,
And it
dunk,
sounds
dunk.
like almost metal. I'm like, what is this
What's
wine
going
bottle?
on?
And she kind of gets herself entangled in this little mob ordeal. And so they're kind of watching out for Ronin now because they all think it's Ronin.
Oh yeah, sure.
Because it fights like Ronin, it looks like Ronin, so
Yeah.
if the shoe
Just
fits.
a little shorter than
a
Ronan.
little,
I
a little
guess.
shorter with prettier eyes.
Yeah. I think I want to say that she's like 5'5" in the comics. It's weird that I know that. But anyway,
It's
so
weird
it's
that I
like,
know
and
that.
then like Hawkeye's like 6'2", so it's like a huge difference.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
yeah.
cool. Anyway, doesn't matter. I'm weird.
And so, Kate needs this artifact, and so she scoops up this artifact, and the people that were there at that like was robbing them also wants that artifact. And so
Okay.
she's entangled with this ordeal now, and so they're kind of like watching all over New York, and they corner her, and they start like trying to beat her up, and obviously they had the upper hand this time because they came prepared, and she like goes around car to car trying to find one that's open. She shuts herself in this unlocked car, and she starts locking all the doors. And then they're trying to get into this car because she can't go. She doesn't have the keys, and she's not hot wiring it. And then boom, the window's busted in, and then nothing happens. And she looks up, and some vigilante has swooped in and is starting to like pummel
Okay.
all these crooks that have been bothering her.
Yeah.
And then the vigilante grabs Kate and throws her into the alley, and he's like about to hit her, throws off the Ronin mask, and he's like, "Oh man,
Yeah.
why are you young?" And
Yeah.
then she looks up, she's like, "Hawkeye!" And
Is
so
that how it
It
ends?
forced him out of retirement.
Oh, that's so
Yeah.
legit.
No, it's
Okay,
so
cool.
fun.
Oh, that's
Really
wonderful.
great show.
Good. So you excited about episode 2?
Yes, which is out right now.
Okay, good. So do they do like 2 episodes at a time, or is it just kind of like each week they drop one? Do you know?
I'm not sure. I didn't
Okay.
keep track of when this dropped, and so I know it was a recent drop, but I don't know if it's been a week or so for a second episode to come out, or if they drop 2 at a time.
Okay, they might. I want to say that with the Scarlet Witch, they did 2 episodes to begin with, and every week after that they did 1 episode. So I think it's probably
that's
the
still
same.
my favorite. That's still my favorite
It's
series.
so good. So okay, So would you recommend this to other people? What rating? So 1 out of 10, 10 being the best, 1 being the worst. How would you rate this first episode?
It actually surprised me. Like I said, I had quite a prejudice against Hawkeye, the name Hawkeye. But the character Kate Bishop is really interesting, and so I feel like it's a really worthy person to take up the mantle. And I would give, if the Scarlet Witch series was a 10 out of 10, which it was, I would set this series at a solid 8.5.
8.5. Okay, you heard it right here, guys.
I do
8.5.
recommend.
Definitely go out. Please see it. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Make sure you like and subscribe to our channel. Every single one of your views and your likes and your comments helps us out, so make sure you go on there. Yes, it counts. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Wildcat Legends. Have a glorious day, and we will see you next time.
Later.
Meow meow.